It was a chilly Tuesday morning when I stepped off the plane and into an unexpected storm of revelations. I had been away on a much-needed business trip, one I'd spent planning to secure a promising new client, and my mind had been filled with visions of success and reunion. But as I navigated the bustling airport, my phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. One email subject line, stark in its simplicity, caught my eye: divorce papers attached. In that instant, every expectation of a warm, happy homecoming dissolved into confusion and dread. My husband had sent me divorce papers while I was away, and then, inexplicably, his subsequent messages were frantic, pleading, almost panicked. The betrayal and the sudden reversal of roles left me breathless, questioning everything I had believed about our life together. I had always assumed that our marriage, built over a decade of shared dreams and quiet sacrifices, was unshakable. Jonathan and I had met in our early 20s at a local community event. He was charming, witty, and possessed a quiet confidence that drew me in immediately. Over time we built a life together that, to the outside world, seemed the very picture of success. We bought a house in a friendly neighborhood, nurtured careers that we both took pride in, and celebrated anniversaries with small, meaningful gestures that cemented our bond. I had often thought that the little arguments we'd had, about money, about how best to balance work and home, were nothing more than the natural friction of two people striving for perfection together. So when I returned from my week-long trip, expecting nothing more than a joyful reunion and perhaps a quiet dinner at home, I was stunned to find a sealed envelope tucked into my email inbox. Its contents, which I hastily scanned while waiting for a taxi, detailed legal jargon and signatures, divorce papers that were effective immediately. I remember my hands trembling as I scrolled through the document, the reality settling in like a weight that threatened to crush me. Who would send such a thing? And why now? I called Jonathan immediately, but the phone went straight to voicemail. A few frantic messages later, he finally returned my call. His voice, usually so steady and reassuring, was barely above a whisper laden with panic. "Sarah, I didn't mean for you to see it that way," he stammered when I finally reached him. I panicked. "Please just listen." I was silent on the line, the storm of emotions raging inside me: anger, hurt, disbelief. How could the man I'd trusted with my life not only plan our separation but also send me legal documents without any warning? The conversation was halting, as if he were grasping for words that might undo the damage, but none came that could bridge the gulf between us. In the following hours I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying every memory, every whispered promise, every tender touch, and wondering when it had all gone so terribly wrong. I arrived at our house to find the front door unlocked, the silence inside heavy with a foreboding emptiness. The living room looked exactly as it had when I'd left, yet something intangible had shifted. I sat in our favorite armchair and opened my laptop, determined to uncover any clue that might explain Jonathan's sudden decision. I began scanning through our shared emails, our calendar entries, even our text messages, anything that might reveal the moment when our love had faltered. Hours passed, and with each new piece of evidence I found, or rather each silence, I felt the betrayal deepen. Our finances were untouched, our home secure, but the emotional foundation we had built was crumbling. Jonathan's messages, which initially were curt and vague, soon evolved into frantic texts filled with pleas for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean for it to go this far," one read, while another simply said, "Please call me, I panicked and made a mistake." They were contradictory, confusing, and utterly insufficient to explain the legal documents I had received. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table, the glow of the setting sun casting long shadows on the walls, and tried to piece together my shattered thoughts. I recalled our last conversation, a tense discussion about our finances, where Jonathan had grown defensive when I suggested we tighten our budget. I remembered the way his eyes had darkened, the sharpness in his tone as he insisted that I wasn't capable of handling money on my own. I wondered if that moment had been the first crack in our marriage's facade. Had he, burdened by pride or insecurity, decided that our future together was no longer worth the sacrifices I was making? I began to cry, quiet, uncontrollable sobs that left me feeling exposed and raw. Yet amid the tears, a quiet resolve began to stir within me. I realized that I deserved answers. I deserved a life built on honesty, respect, and mutual trust. I decided that I would not let this betrayal define me, even if it meant shattering the illusions I had held onto for so long. Over the next few days, I sought solace in the company of close friends. Marissa, who had been by my side through every high and low, came to visit. We sat in her small, warmly lit living room, where I recounted every painful detail, from the moment I received the divorce papers to the frantic messages that followed Jonathan's panicked calls. "You must do what's best for you, Sarah," she said, her voice steady with conviction. "No one deserves to be treated like that, and you deserve answers. You deserve a future where you are respected." Her words, though gentle, ignited a spark of determination inside me, a spark that would soon guide me on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I also reached out to a therapist, Dr. Evelyn Carter, who specialized in marital trauma. In our sessions, I learned to untangle the web of emotions that had enveloped me: anger, betrayal, self-doubt, and grief. "It's important to recognize that his actions are a reflection of his own insecurities, not your worth," Dr. Carter explained one afternoon. "You have every right to demand honesty and respect." Her insights helped me begin the slow, painful process of reclaiming my identity, a process that involved acknowledging the hurt but also nurturing the strength I had always possessed, even when I had been too afraid to see it. Meanwhile, I began to gather the documents and evidence related to the divorce papers. I reviewed every line of the legal text, noting that nothing about our shared assets or our joint finances had been mentioned, a glaring omission that made me wonder if this was all some sort of ill-conceived, impulsive decision on Jonathan's part. I contacted our attorney, Ms. Richards, who assured me that under state law, sending divorce papers without proper discussion or notice was highly irregular and could be contested in court. "We have grounds to challenge this," she said confidently. "If he panicked and sent these papers without proper intent, we can argue that his actions were a mistake, and that your rights as his spouse are intact." Her assurance gave me a renewed sense of hope that justice might prevail. One rainy afternoon, I visited our family home, once the warm, bustling center of our lives, to see if I could find any clues in the quiet corners that might explain Jonathan's sudden decision. I walked through the rooms, running my fingers along the familiar surfaces, and felt a profound sense of loss. The photographs on the mantelpiece, the well-worn couch in the living room, even the faded wallpaper in the hallway, all spoke of a time when love was simpler, dreams were shared, and trust was unchallenged. But now, every object seemed tainted by the betrayal that had taken root in my marriage. I left the house with a heavy heart, knowing that the answers I sought were not in the memories of the past but in the choices I would make for my future. As the weeks turned into a month, the legal proceedings began to take shape. Jonathan's initial panicked messages gave way to longer, more considered apologies. In several lengthy phone calls, he admitted that his impulsive act of sending the divorce papers was driven by a mix of fear and a deep-seated insecurity that I had never fully understood. "I panicked, Sarah," he said during one call, his voice wavering. "I thought that if I took a drastic step, it might solve everything. The pressure, the endless demands, the feeling that I was failing." He claimed that his actions were not a reflection of his love for me but a misguided attempt to reclaim control over his own life. But his explanations felt hollow, inadequate to mend the deep rift that had been created in that moment of violence and betrayal. In the meantime, I continued to focus on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work as a freelance graphic designer, taking on projects that challenged me creatively and allowed me to connect with new clients. Each new assignment was a small victory, a reaffirmation that I was capable, resourceful, and determined to succeed regardless of the chaos that had upended my personal life. I started networking with local professionals, attending design conferences, and even collaborating with a few startups that admired my resilience. Slowly, my reputation began to rebuild, and I started to see a future that was not defined by Jonathan's impulsive actions. I also reconnected with the community that had supported me during the darkest days. I joined a local support group for survivors of marital betrayal, where I met other women who had faced similar heartbreak. Their stories, raw and honest, helped me see that while the pain of betrayal could be overwhelming, it also held the potential for profound transformation. In our meetings, we shared our experiences, our fears, and our hopes for the future, and I began to understand that healing was not a destination but a continuous journey, a series of small, courageous steps taken day by day. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a modest, sunlit space that I had decorated with vibrant colors and cherished mementos, I found a quiet moment of clarity. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the cool night air whispered promises of new beginnings. I thought about the countless times I had doubted my worth, about the moments when Jonathan's anger and betrayal had made me question everything I had built. And I realized something profound. While his actions had hurt me deeply, they had also awakened a strength within me that I never knew existed. I had survived the unthinkable, and in doing so, I had discovered that true empowerment comes from within, a quiet, unyielding resolve to reclaim one's own destiny. I began to write again, a practice that had always been a refuge for me. I poured my thoughts into a journal, capturing the nuances of my journey from that violent, heartbreaking anniversary to the slow, steady process of healing and self-discovery. I wrote about the pain of that day, the cold, empty look in Jonathan's eyes, and the bitter echo of his words. But I also wrote about the moments of tenderness that followed, about the friends who rallied around me, the therapist who guided me, and the small victories in my career that reminded me that I was more than the sum of my scars. Each word was a step toward reclaiming my voice, a defiant refusal to be defined by the actions of someone else. As the legal battle wound its way to a close, I attended the final hearing with a sense of cautious optimism. The courtroom, stark and imposing, was a place where truth and justice were meant to prevail. I testified about the incident in painstaking detail, describing the shock, the pain, and the deep sense of betrayal that had overwhelmed me that fateful morning. My attorney, Ms. Richards, presented the evidence with a calm, methodical precision that left little doubt about the injustice I had suffered. When the judge finally ruled in my favor, granting me a divorce that restored my legal rights and issuing a restraining order against Jonathan, I felt a surge of relief mixed with a lingering sadness for what had been lost. That ruling was a turning point, a formal acknowledgement that I was not to blame for the violence I had endured, that my pain was valid, and that my future was mine to rebuild. It was a bittersweet victory. While I was free from the shackles of a toxic marriage, the memories of that violent morning would always linger like a shadow. Yet with each passing day I grew stronger. I learned to let the pain fuel my determination, to transform every tear into a step toward a brighter future. In the months that followed, I focused on both healing and growth. I continued to expand my freelance work, taking on high-profile projects that pushed me to refine my skills and assert my creative vision. I attended workshops on personal development, where I learned strategies for setting boundaries and cultivating self-respect. I even started volunteering at a local women's shelter, where I shared my story with others who had faced similar betrayals, offering them hope and practical advice on how to reclaim their lives. These experiences, though challenging, enriched me with a sense of purpose and a renewed belief that my worth was not defined by the cruelty of the past. Socially, I began to reassemble the pieces of my life. I reconnected with old friends and forged new relationships with people who valued honesty, empathy, and resilience. I even joined a local art collective, where I discovered that my passion for painting and writing could be powerful mediums of self-expression and healing. Each brushstroke on a canvas, each word on a page, became a celebration of the woman I was becoming. A woman who refused to be broken by betrayal, but rather was empowered by the lessons learned from it. One crisp spring afternoon, nearly a year after that fateful anniversary, I attended a small reunion with some close friends and family members who had been supportive throughout my ordeal. The atmosphere was subdued but warm, filled with gentle laughter and heartfelt conversations. As I sat across from my cousin, who had always admired my resilience, I realized that while the scars of betrayal would never fully disappear, they no longer dictated the terms of my existence. I had reclaimed my voice and my future, and I could now look at the past as a series of hard-won lessons rather than a chain that bound me. My cousin squeezed my hand, whispering, "You're stronger than ever, Sarah. We all see it." Those words, simple yet profound, filled me with a quiet satisfaction, a recognition that I had triumphed over the darkness. Jonathan, on the other hand, had become a ghost in my life, a figure whose presence was felt only in the bitter echoes of memory. His attempts at reconciliation dwindled over time, his panicked messages became sporadic and insincere, and eventually he faded into the background, a cautionary tale of what happens when pride and rage take over love. I realized that his actions, though deeply painful, had ultimately set me free to build a life defined not by his cruelty, but by my own unwavering strength and determination. Now, as I sit in my bright, peaceful apartment, surrounded by the art and books that have become my constant companions, I reflect on the long, winding journey that brought me here. The memory of that violent morning, the shock of the coffee splashing across my face, the searing pain of a betrayal I never saw coming, remains etched in my heart. But it no longer controls me. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the power that lies within me, a power to overcome, to rebuild, and to redefine my future on my own terms. Every day is a testament to that resilience. I wake up knowing that while the scars of the past may still ache, they are also the badges of honor for the battles I have fought and won. I have learned that true empowerment comes not from seeking validation from someone else, but from the quiet, steadfast belief that I am worthy of love, respect, and happiness. My journey from that fateful anniversary to the life I now lead has been long and fraught with pain, but it has also been a journey of self-discovery and transformation. A journey that has taught me that even in the face of the darkest betrayal, one can find the strength to rise again. This is my story, a story of a woman who was pushed to the brink by a violent act of betrayal, who fought to reclaim her dignity, and who emerged not unscathed but unbroken. It is a story of heartbreak and healing, of the bitter taste of betrayal transformed into the sweet promise of a new beginning. I have built a future defined by my own choices, a future where I hold the power to shape my destiny. And though the echoes of that violent anniversary may never fully fade, they serve as a constant reminder that I have the courage, the resilience, and the strength to overcome any obstacle. As I look forward to each new day, I carry with me the unshakable belief that no one can ever diminish the light that burns within me. I have learned to let go of the past, to forgive not for the sake of those who hurt me, but for my own liberation. I continue to write, to create, and to inspire others with my journey, reminding everyone that even when the world seems to crumble around you, you have the power to rebuild it into something beautiful, something uniquely your own. And so, I step confidently into the future, determined to live my life with the fierce independence and unyielding spirit that have come to define me.